A millionaire CEO caught the nanny solving a $200 million problem in seconds. What he did next shocked everyone. Before this story begins, tell me in the comments, have you ever been completely underestimated because of how you look? Comment your experience, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories that reveal what's really behind the mask. Who even hired her? The question was whispered, clipped and not meant to reach the girl holding the child's bottle at the far end of the marble hallway, but she heard it. Her name was Sabrina Vale, 29 years old, new to the city and freshly hired as a live-in nanny at the Ashcroft estate, an architectural masterpiece nestled in the hills above San Francisco, owned by Dorian Ashcroft, a tech titan worth just shy of $12 billion. Sabrina didn't blink. She tucked the bottle under her arm, adjusted the baby monitor, and whispered softly to little Lily in the crib, who was already drifting off. She'd been hired less than a week ago through an agency. Her references solid, her demeanor quiet, her look nothing flashy. In fact, that was exactly what the Ashcroft house manager Tilda liked about her. But behind those soft eyes and patient smile, Sabrina carried more than diapers and bedtime lullabies. She carried secrets, and once a very different title. Senior systems architect at a global fintech firm, but no one here knew that. They only knew she was good with children, that she asked for no weekends off, that she cooked better than the chef, and that she always listened more than she spoke. So when Dorian Ashcroft's latest prototype, the crown jewel of his upcoming $200 million product launch, suddenly began malfunctioning behind closed lab doors, the last person anyone suspected of having answers was the nanny, until she left a note, just a short one, tucked beneath the schematics Dorian had been reviewing during breakfast, written in soft, careful handwriting. Check line 38 of the stability loop. You're missing a mirrored encryption key. Dorian didn't react at first. He assumed it was from one of the junior engineers. But when he scanned the security feed and saw Sabrina dropping off the note politely, quietly, without saying a word, he froze. She wasn't even supposed to know what line 38 was, let alone spot the error in seconds. He didn't confront her that day. Instead, he called in his chief of engineering. Run a full diagnostic, he ordered. Just humor me. 20 minutes later, the engineering team had to sit down, because Sabrina had been right. The glitch, one that had cost them $11 million in testing delays, was fixed in seconds by the nanny, and that changed everything. That evening, Sabrina was folding laundry when her phone vibrated from Mr. Ashcroft has requested your presence at dinner. 8 p.m. sharp, formal attire. She stared at the screen, her fingers didn't move. She'd gone unnoticed for months, hiding in plain sight, caring for Lily, navigating her way back into society after what had happened to her at her last tech job. But now Dorian Ashcroft had noticed her. She thought about ignoring the invitation, pretending she hadn't seen it. But something in her gut whispered, it's time. At 8:02 p.m., Sabrina descended the spiral staircase in a deep green blouse and black trousers. Her hair was neatly tied back. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't need to. Dorian sat at the head of the long dining table, flanked by 2 assistants and a tablet screen propped beside his wine glass. Sabrina, he said, standing. Thank you for joining us. She gave a polite nod. Of course, sir. He gestured for her to sit. The assistant stayed silent, taking notes as if this were a business meeting. Dorian didn't waste time. I reviewed your note. Yes, sir. You were right. I'm glad it helped. Silence then. How did you know? Sabrina looked him straight in the eye. Because I wrote the original framework that inspired your protocol. Dorian blinked. I worked at Egypt before it merged with Dominion, before the ethics scandal. He leaned back slowly. You were involved in the whistleblower leak. She nodded. I was the whistleblower. He stared at her. But your name was never released. Exactly. Dorian folded his hands. Why are you here, working as a nanny? She smiled faintly. Because it was safer. Another pause. Then he said something that caught her off guard. I need your help. She looked up. My lead engineer just quit. I have 3 weeks to fix the entire back-end infrastructure before the product launch. If I don't, the investors will. And you want the nanny to rebuild your codebase. I want you, Sabrina Vale, the woman who saw in seconds what my team missed in 6 months. Silence. Then Sabrina asked, and what happens to Lily? Dorian blinked. You mean I'm her nanny? I care about her first. He exhaled. Bring her to the lab. What would you have done if a billionaire CEO asked you to rebuild a $200 million system after treating you like you didn't exist? Comment your answer before we reveal what happened next. The next morning, Sabrina stood in the high-security R&D lab of Ashcroft Dynamics, Lily cooing softly in a bassinet nearby. 10 engineers watched from behind glass as Sabrina tied her hair back and pulled up the system schematic on the giant touchscreen. Dorian stood beside her. This is the full model, he said. It's all yours. Sabrina nodded, scanning the architecture. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She muttered terms that made the others exchange confused glances. After 20 minutes, she turned to Dorian. You're not just missing encryption keys, she said. Your system is duplicating decision branches based on false AI logic loops. Someone installed a backdoor. Dorian's jaw tensed. A mole. Worse, she said. tapping on a name in the log file. It was his CTO, Andrew Walsh, she said softly. He sold the infrastructure to an overseas firm 3 weeks ago. Impossible, Dorian snapped. But Sabrina clicked a series of commands, decrypted the hidden files, and opened a transmission log. It was all their dates, times, account routes, payout trails. His CTO had betrayed him. Dorian sank into a chair, hand over his mouth. I trusted him. Sabrina stepped back. I'm just the nanny. Remember? He looked at her, then really looked. No, he said quietly. You're the reason this company isn't dead. He stood. What do you want? Sabrina blinked. Excuse me. You can name your position: CTO, lead architect. Cool. You want equity? Done. Name it. She shook her head. 1. Full protection for Lily's future, her college, her care, her well-being. I've grown to love her. He nodded. Done. And the second? Sabrina smiled. I want to finish what I started, but this time with full visibility. No shadows. She extended her hand, and Dorian shook it. 3 days later, Sabrina Vale sat in the corner office that once belonged to the man who betrayed Dorian Ash. Her nameplate wasn't on the door yet, but her presence, unmistakable. A new team had formed around her, carefully vetted, handpicked for integrity, not just resume. Dorian had gone quiet after their lab reveal, not out of suspicion, but reflection. Then he did something unexpected. He held a press conference, live-streamed, no scripts. My name is Dorian Ashcroft, he began, standing before a wall of flashing cameras. And I almost lost everything. My company, my future, because I failed to listen. I failed to see the power in quiet rooms, in unseen hands, in underestimated people. He paused. Today I want to introduce you to the woman who saved this company from internal collapse, a former whistleblower who was silenced by a corrupt system. Until now, he gestured behind him, and Sabrina stepped out. The cameras went wild, social media exploded, #Nanny no more trended globally within the hour. But not everyone was celebrating, because one man watching the live stream from a penthouse suite in Singapore didn't clap. He scowled. His name was Gerard Vale, Sabrina's estranged father, and he wasn't just anybody. He was the former CEO of the company she had once exposed, the same man who helped destroy her career to protect his own, and now he wanted revenge. Are you sure you want to do this? Dorian asked quietly. He and Sabrina were standing in the rooftop garden of Ashcroft HQ. The city sparkled below, but Sabrina's eyes were fixed on the horizon. He's already coming for me, she said. The storm came faster than expected. That evening, Sabrina received a formal cease and desist letter accusing her of breaking a non-disclosure agreement from her former employer. Violation of that NDA, it claimed, would cost her $20 million. But Sabrina smiled as she read it, because she knew something Gerard Vale didn't. The NDA never legally existed. 10 years ago, before the ethics case exploded, Sabrina had refused to sign the document they presented to silence her. She had demanded oversight, legal transparency, and when they couldn't offer it, she walked. They'd buried her in lawsuits, twisted headlines, and public silence. But they'd never gotten her signature. She still had the original letter, untouched, She walked into Dorian's office the next morning and dropped it on his desk. No signature, she said. Not then. He scanned it, exhaled, and smiled. You just turned their bullet into a boomerang. Would you have kept that unsigned letter for 10 years just in case? Let us know in the comments. And what's one thing you've held on to that everyone else forgot? The next day, Sabrina walked into the Ashcroft vault. It wasn't a literal vault, but it felt like one, deep in the building's basement. Fireproof doors sealed away every line of legacy code ever written for the company's original framework. It was here she had asked to be left alone for 1 hour. No one knew what she was doing, not even Dorian. But Sabrina knew exactly what to look for. She pulled out a dusty hard drive labeled ARCS OSV Jung, Zero Beta Legacy. This was the code she had helped author over a decade ago, and deep inside, beneath pages of system logic and authentication chains, was a backdoor loop she'd written, one she never told anyone about, not even her former team, because back then, she knew one day, someone might try to hijack what she'd built, and now that day had come. Gerard Vale had moved swiftly, buying up patents, acquiring her former employer's assets, and preparing to merge with Ashcroft Dynamics under a hostile bid. But Sabrina, she smiled, because she knew something Gerard didn't. His takeover depended on legacy code integration, and buried inside that code was a self-invalidating checksum triggered only when outside metadata was introduced without internal authentication. In plain English, if he tried to merge, the system would eat itself alive. A built-in digital Trojan horse, authored by the Nanny. The Ashcroft executive board was in chaos. Half were whispering urgently among themselves. The other half sat frozen, staring at the main screen, where security footage had just played Sabrina cracking the security breach code in under 2 minutes. Dorian stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, watching them squirm. I want to be absolutely clear, he said. This is the woman who saved us from a $200 million disaster. The nanny you all ignored. One board member cleared his throat. But Mr. Ashcroft, surely we can't promote someone with no degree, no current credentials. She holds 3 degrees, Dorian interrupted. One in software engineering, one in applied mathematics, and a third in cybersecurity. She just didn't tell you because you were too busy calling her the help. Another member blinked. Why was she working as a nanny? Sabrina, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. Because I needed to be close to my daughter, and this was the only job that didn't judge me for wanting to do both. Gasps swept the room. Your daughter, someone whispered. Dorian nodded slowly. Yes, Sabrina Vale is the mother of my child. You could hear a pin drop. That night, Sabrina stood in the kitchen of the penthouse, staring at an old, faded envelope she had hidden in the back of a silverware drawer. It was stamped confidential, Ashcroft legacy, and sealed with wax. She had debated for years whether to open it. Now felt like the right time. Inside was a letter from Dorian's late mother, handwritten, to whoever finds this. If my son ever truly falls in love, tell him the truth about the merger clause buried in the Ashcroft estate deed. There's a reason I never sold my half. The day he finds someone who protects his company better than its board, give her the power to veto any hostile deal. She's the legacy now. Adelaide Ashcroft. Sabrina's hands trembled. The letter included a hidden key. She picked up her phone. Dorian, she said. I found something your mother. She left this for us. If you discovered a secret letter that could stop a billion-dollar corporate betrayal, would you reveal it or keep it hidden for protection? Tell us in the comments below. The next day, Sabrina walked into the Ashcroft boardroom. Again, this time, she carried the envelope. She laid the brass key on the table. What's this? Asked one of the board members. Dorian held it up. This unlocks a legacy clause, buried deep in our family's original estate deed. One only my mother had access to. He inserted the key into a hidden compartment behind the boardroom portrait. A mechanism clicked. Out slid a tiny case containing Adelaide Ashcroft's handwritten addendum, legally witnessed and notarized. It stated that any woman who met 3 conditions: 1. Saved the company from internal sabotage. 2. Protected a family member from betrayal. 3. Acted out of love, not profit. Could veto any corporate takeover or merger. Sabrina met all 3. She had just become the final vote on Gerard Vale's hostile bid, and she used it denied. She said. The room erupted. One executive stood in disbelief. But we've already signed half the documents. Sabrina looked him straight in the eye. You should have checked the fine print. Dorian walked over and kissed her gently on the cheek, then turned to the team. Let this be a reminder. Never underestimate someone just because they're quiet, or kind, or raising a child.